Hey, welcome back to another Just 15 Minutes. Well, we hope. There's no guarantee in that statement. But anyway, you catch me in the middle of, with all this AI stuff, it's. I did a podcast just recently about the overwhelm, and it really is. It's like there's so much stuff, but a bit like a huge buffet, you know, where you go in and you think, wow, look at all this food. Well, just pick the bits that you really like and focusing on that. Anyway, but I've been using GitHub Copilot. I was using the paid version. Obviously, there's the free version now, so that's all good. And it is actually all of them, all of them are brilliant, really. When you think back even 5 years ago, even 2 or 3 years ago, really, but certainly 5+ years ago, we had things like Stack Overflow to go and check, code snippets, and there was definitely the copy and pasting going on, and I'm guilty of that for sure. But that was your go-to thing, wasn't it, to try to find out what was wrong, or the internet in general. There's obviously lots of great websites out there that specialized in certain things, but Stack Overflow was one of those common ones. Okay, and I feel a bit sad for Stack Overflow. I know they're still probably got quite a lot of usage, and they do need to adapt, which is where we're up to at the moment. So you catch me using one of the latest things. This was it's actually Anthropic, the people who make Claude, which I've got a feeling, and I don't know this 100%, by the way, if you're like me, got a lot of these sort of like smart systems in your house, the Amazon ones. I won't say the name because it'll fire off all the little commands. Love it or hate it, for me, it actually really helps, to do quite a lot of stuff. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because I think Amazon, I've got to check the facts on this one, obviously, but go and have a look yourself, actually. But I think Amazon invested something like 8 billion or something in Anthropic. And I think they partially use some of the technology in the new Her Name Plus, the Echo Plus, but the Alexa name, which, I don't want to trigger all those things, which is due to come out soon after a long, long time. Anyway, that is basically Anthropic are behind that. And again, I don't know the full details of that, so you might want to validate that. But they created Claude. So there was a few versions of Claude, a bit like ChatGPT, Claude Sonnet, I think. 3.5 was quite useful. But all these models are just evolving so quick. It's every blink of an eye you've got another thing. But Claude Sonnet 3.7 was a fairly, as of the time of this recording anyway, a fairly recent one. And that was also bolted into Visual Studio, or Visual Studio Code. So GitHub Copilot has access to GPT-4o and a few other ones, the O3 Mini and a few other bits, but also Claude 3.7. And I have to say, I created a mobile app using .NET MAUI. Maybe we'll do another sort of video on that at a later stage. That's a cross-platform mobile environment that Microsoft have. It's open source, but again, flavors of ice cream. If you don't like Microsoft, fine. There's lots of options out there. There are really lots of options. It is an unlimited buffet, isn't it? You just have to pick what you feel that you like, really. But anyway, that GitHub Copilot specifically with Sonnet 3.7 really, it struggled a bit in places, but then that could be down to me not explaining exactly what I was after or not knowing what I wanted to express. That's the other thing. But it did eventually, and that's the perseverance. I think I mentioned in my Just 5 Minutes podcast, I don't know when to stop. I don't know when enough is enough, because I've the luxury of maybe a little bit more time and maybe not the day-to-day pressures of a real developer. But either way, I persevered with it, and it did actually generate a reasonable mobile app that worked on Android, iOS, Windows, sort of as a Windows app, and a Mac OS app as well, Catalyst. So anyway, but back to today, come on. So essentially Anthropic with Claude, they have released a preview. It's a research preview at the moment. So keep that in mind before you even start. But it's I don't know. I like I said, it's so overwhelming anyway. But this has actually just blown my mind on the way that it's developed an application that I'll show you in a second. And it basically just created this from scratch, an empty directory. Okay. Now, I'm already part way through, but I'm not cheating. You can try the prompt out for yourself to do this. But first of all, let's just have a look at the details. Now, there's the app, and I'll come back to this in a minute. Okay. But basically, Claude Code is what we're looking at. It's a research preview. So you just have to keep that in mind. Okay. I'll put the links in the show notes. They're there anyway, so you're okay. But the point being is that it's a command line tool. Okay. There's nothing scary about that. There are some prerequisites that you need to push through. Now, it really only works on a Linux environment, or Linux, or Mac, basically properly, but it can run on Windows with WSL, which is the Windows subsystem for Linux, okay, or Linux. That's getting old, isn't it? Anyway, but the point being is, if you follow some of these instructions, you can go to the official documentation and have a look at that. Now, basically, because my go-to is Docker desktop, I ended up creating a dev environment, which essentially grabs a Docker image. I've got the Ubuntu latest. I like Ubuntu. I feel a bit more comfortable, but again, it's flavors of ice cream. Look at all the flavors of Linux that you've got. You can pick what you like. I like it because a lot of the documentation seems to be, built around the Ubuntu version of Linux. So anyway, I'll go through this. I think I've done a video on this, but it's actually not as scary as you might think, getting Docker Desktop for one, which is just an application, and then essentially running a dev environment. Okay. And essentially what it does, it grabs an image and it runs a container, but it allows you then to do things like open in VS Code. Anyway, that's what I've got running here. Okay. And it runs as like this remote container. Okay, now it's basically full on Ubuntu Linux. So instead of having to load anything locally, I've said this many times, obviously, it basically just allows you to run a specific environment. So I'm running this with all the prerequisites. If you need any more details, I can go into that. If you want to comment, I'll be happy to try to provide that for you, but the setup isn't as complex. It was a bit fiddly on Windows, I'll be really honest, even with WSL. And if you don't know what WSL is, there's a whole thing on that as well. But again, there just seemed to be a few more hoops and loops and issues. So I just got Docker Desktop that I use daily anyway, and got the image, and it worked. And essentially I just ran this command here to get Claude Code. Okay. It's npm, which is the node package manager. Again, there's a whole thing on the official documentation of how you get the prerequisites. It's not, honestly, it really isn't that complex to get that going. And then you just run Claude, okay, in the command line. Okay, so that's what I did here. Also what you will need, and this is the only, I wouldn't even call it a downside, but just to be aware of, is you do need an Anthropic sort of login, a Claude account, and you do have to have some credits in your Claude or Anthropic environment. Okay. I think the minimum that they allow you to put in there is $5 US dollars. But as you'll see, what I'm about to show you didn't actually cost that much at all. Okay. The first attempt cost, I don't know, a couple of cents. Not even that. And when you see what it's actually generated, try going on Fiverr and getting that generated for 2 cents, or outsourcing this for 2 cents. It's just laughable, really, what you can do. So anyway, there are a few things to consider. So when you initially type Claude, you will need to log in, basically. So you'll have an Anthropic account. Put like $5 of credit on there. They don't auto renew or anything like that. You can, but by default, it won't just keep taking your money. So that's a good thing. But there you go. And once you've got that, you're into a command prompt like I've got on the screen at the moment here. Okay. There's a / for commands, and you can see it's got a few commands. One of them is the login that I mentioned, that you have to log in for your Anthropic account. But then there's all sorts of wonderful things you can do. But also you can just start typing a prompt. Okay. Now that's what I did. And just to show you one more step, like I said, there's a good video. These guys are just meditating at the moment by the looks of it before they start the video. But it's a good intro video. It's one that Anthropic released. So again, you can go and have a search for this. I'll put the link below anyway. But basically what I asked is to build, because I'm building a little application myself in Microsoft Blazor using WebAssembly. But anyway, I just thought, I wonder, given modern day HTML and JavaScript, CSS and all that, I wonder if it could actually start to at least, as a proof of concept, generate a tool which is basically like a workflow tool, but I'm going to be capturing some requirements and things like that on the way. And this is what's on the screen. This is localhost. This is running from that dev container. No tricks up my sleeve. Now, I started this, so you catch me already halfway through what I've been doing. But honestly, try it yourself if you want to sign up for this. I started with a blank directory. There was no files at all. Okay. And the prompt went something like, I want to build a native HTML, JavaScript, CSS app to create a workflow with symbol palette, with the workflow symbols. And I want to be able to drag them, put them on, the page, connect them up. And I want to be able to add notes for, to say what the process is doing. Okay, it was something along the lines of that. I mean, I can find it because it does record the prompts, but it went ahead. Now it took, just to let you know, it took probably 2 or 3 minutes, because essentially Claude Code, like a lot of these ones now, are all agentic coding. They're all using agents to check what it's done, going through to the next bit. Did I do that correct? Is there any errors? Go back and look at them. Now, GitHub Copilot, if you've got Visual Studio Code Insider's version, has already got the agent mode. They've had chat and edits mode for a little while, but they've got agent mode coming, and I'm sure that's going to be bursting onto the full release scene very soon. But anyway, that's how I started, and it generated all of this. Now, I had a few issues. I say I've got a few issues. Look, I mean, just to show this, look, it's not quite rendered everything perfectly how I want it, and I want to use vector images, SVGs basically, for these, which I'm going to get to. But all I have to do is click one of these things, pop it on. Yeah, I can add some additional notes. You know, this is the start. Okay, I can add a process on maybe. Okay, and I can drag and drop these things around. This is all HTML, JavaScript, CSS. By the way, I also explicitly said no frameworks like React or Angular or Vue or anything like that. Nothing against those frameworks, but I just wanted to see, can it achieve this with just plain old vanilla JavaScript? Okay, and so far that is what I've got. So if I put this is a process or something like that, you can now see I've got text for this. I've got text now for this is the start. Okay, I can change border colors, fill colors, and maybe there, look, it's got a color. It did all of this. I'm just blown away. I really am. It generated the whole thing, the whole page. It's put the symbol palette. It's put the properties. I can do that now. Obviously, at the moment, what I want to do, because at the moment it's just dragging, I have to do right mouse click and it will connect those up. Okay, no big deal. But the idea is, what I then asked to do is, the save isn't working yet. I haven't implemented that. I say I haven't asked the AI to implement that yet. But the generate document, the idea is behind it is going to show the diagram or specific bits, but it's also going to detail the process flow and allow you to download that as a PDF or a Word document or whatever it is that you want to do. Okay, but it's already got that far. Now, I started where we jumped in. I asked it to do a few improvements, basically. It's gone through and essentially told me what it's done. It's given me a summary here. It's improved the text rendering, not brilliantly, but it was all over the place, some of the text. And also what I didn't have is this, the per element node notes, if I've got that out there. Okay, so this bit here, okay, it didn't have that, but now it's added it. Okay, I've got some global notes as well, but the idea is that I mean, it's it's done a reasonable job, but you know what? Considering this took something like about 5 minutes in total for the AI to generate, and also it probably cost less than a couple of cents to do this. Okay, but it generated, and I've looked at this, I've looked at the HTML. I'm not overly expert in JavaScript, but I mean, I know a little bit, and yes, you could argue that you do need it, but it has actually gone through and used really best practice, up-to-date JavaScript. It's not using TypeScript yet, which I sort of want to use TypeScript. But anyway, but the point being is, when I read through this, I mean, it's commented everything. There's lines and lines and lines and lines of code, which, sure, if it had actually really made a complete, mess of the project, then, it's okay. But honestly, that I haven't touched the keyboard apart from the prompt, or prompts. I've done, and that's the other thing, by the way. I've done 2 sets of prompts. I started with the original one that I mentioned, and I think you can probably see, if I go all the way up here, there we go. I think it's in here. Yeah, my diagram up is looking good and working well. I'd like to make workflow symbols nicer. I didn't really specify anything very specific there. The text on the symbols does quite fit. I didn't even explain things properly, but you know what I mean. That was, oh, sorry. Okay, so sorry, there was a bit of an interruption there, so I've had to edit that a little bit. I do apologize. Very professional, this, very professional. But that's what I've ended up doing. I've ended up prompting it, and I'll be really honest, so far to the until now, the date of whatever it is, the date. Actually, it's spring in the UK anyway, the 1st of March 2025. This has definitely developed from this perspective anyway. The HTML, JavaScript, CSS, no frameworks involved at all. And by the way, that also means no CSS framework. Now again, Bootstrap, Tailwind, there's loads of options out there. But I specifically wanted to see how far this could go. And that's it. 2 prompts. It's generated that. Now, yeah. Do you need to know what it's doing? Of course, yeah. But you can, it's a little bit like when you're a kid, you build Lego, etc. You're not expected to know full engineering concepts and how a combustion engine works, are you? So theoretically, it's a similar thing, I reckon, is that you can get this to generate it, and then sure, you can go and say, well, what does this bit do? What does actually that do? And you can ask the AI to explain it. So you can sort of almost reverse engineer, a bit like when you were a kid. And I like that idea. Is you can build Lego, you can build, a Meccano. Is that still a thing? And find out how a combustion engine works, etc. So yeah, look, there's lots of different approaches there. You can go to university, learn about proper computing and development and programming and all that sort of stuff, and that's probably not a bad thing, and there's loads of courses and all that sort of stuff. But to be able to do this, that's it just gives you so many more avenues to be able to do coding, and like I said, that's what this has built so far, which I think is pretty incredible. So I've gone over a little bit of the 15 minutes as usual. It is a bit of a joke, isn't it? But that's what we're up to. And I'm going to be pushing on with this to see if I can polish it up. So maybe we'll revisit it in another episode. So, but anyway, like I said, there's a lot of instructions in the documentation. I'll put the links in. If you need any further information, let me know, and if there's enough info or enough people wanting to know, I can do things like, how to get into the Docker dev containers to get this running, maybe go through more of a setup process. But anyway, that's what I've got. Hope you're well. Take care. Have a good day or a good week. And we will catch you on the next one.